stops the Empire State Development Corporation from proceeding with condemnation?
They can commence an action, which presumably they will do. We will try to prevent them from commencing the action by filing this case that I referenced earlier that we intend to file next week, to force the ESDC to consider the changed circumstances over the last 3 years. And in the proceeding itself, we are entitled to defend and to prevent the taking of the property based on all of the procedural issues and irregularities that have arisen also over the last 3 years. So we will be defending on that ground, and we will be affirmatively bringing another lawsuit at this point. That's our intention in the next week.
If you're successful, what happens with that other lawsuit? They issue another determination?
They would issue another determination, and we would be back to where we were in 2006. We would challenge it. We would go to court again, federal and or state court, and seek to have it determined to be not a public use. Because the problem here is that the public use finding is now based, the one that was affirmed by the Court of Appeals today, is based on conditions that everyone knows do not exist. There's no upgraded rail yard. The affordable housing is contingent on something no one can guarantee. The arena itself, which is the only thing that we know will be built, is a money loser. All of the benefits that Daniel was just referring to and asking somebody to show us the numbers on are phantoms. They do not exist. And so the argument remains as it always has been, because all that got affirmed today was that what they found in 2006, it was constitutional. What we need to know is whether or not what they're doing today in 2009 is unconstitutional.
Is there any precedent for that kind of thing? Asking to go back and issue another?
There's definitely precedent to force an agency, here the ESDC, to comply with its legal obligations. And its legal obligation is to make a finding based on reality, not a fantasy. And what we know now is their findings were a fantasy. And we asked the Court of Appeals, just to be clear, to consider all of these new facts, as people who followed the case know, and they declined our request. And so now the next option we have, the only option we have, to have these findings or have these takings be considered in light of what exists on the ground in November of 2009, is to file this case. So that's what we intend to do.
Ask for an injunction to stop them from condemning the land going forward, because I mean they're saying they're going to basically start.
Well, but that's a fantasy as well. They can't do that. They do not have title to the properties of my clients. That's undisputed. And nobody should have any illusions about that. They cannot tomorrow serve anybody with an eviction notice. They have an entire court process that they have to go through that they haven't even begun. That's clear. People need to understand that. A condemnation in New York is a two-step process. They have finished step one, and we're going to go back and try to restart step one. But even if that fails, they have to do step two. And step two is what they have to do to get to the point where they have titled the property, where they can then ask if that's what they really want to do. If what they want to do is evict women and small children and babies and everybody else, then they will be doing that. I don't know how many months it will take or years it will take, but they can seek the assistance of the sheriff after they finish step two. They haven't even started it.
Okay, how, in your scheme of things, has the involvement of Mikhail Prokhorov in the project, has it changed things from your perspective?
Actually, from my perspective,
well, okay.
No.
All right.
No, because my perspective is a lawyer representing people who live in the footprint.
The group's perspective of it?
It's irrelevant who owns the nets. The takings of these properties are wrong, and the project is wrong and does not provide a benefit to Brooklyn. It doesn't matter who owns the team. Having said that, it's offensive to subsidize one of the richest men in the world with my home, and my neighbors' homes, and our hundreds of millions of dollars in taxpayers' money. It's offensive. It was offensive with Ratner. It's a little bit more offensive with Prokhorov. And Prokhorov's never going to set foot, or his team's never going to set foot in Brooklyn, because he only owns the team, he has said, if they move to Brooklyn. The Nets will not be moving to Brooklyn, which we should be thankful for, because the Nets can't win a game. There's a whole process till they take our properties. If they ever get to that point, then there's a process of deciding how long we get to stay in our homes. And that's going to be a long time. So when they put out their press release today and talk to you and say they're breaking ground in 2 weeks or whatever they're telling you, it's a show. Because they can't, this is where the arena would be. This, on top of this, and the next block. You can't build an arena with this here. and people in it. So nothing's starting anytime soon, if ever. Also, there is an outstanding decision that this same Court of Appeals needs to make. There was a motion filed by Develop Don't Destroy and 26 other organizations on an appeal of our challenge to the environmental impact statement for this project. The issue comes down, in that case, comes down to whether or not the blight study is legitimate under state law, whether or not it was an arbitrary, irrational decision to determine that this is blighted, as well as whether or not a privately owned for-profit arena is a civic project under state law. Those are the two key issues there. Obviously, they're related to today's decision. That motion was filed in August. We've not heard from the court yet on what they do. We hope they take our case. If they take that case, forget about Atlantic Yards.
You know, if the sheriff shows up at your door, what are you gonna do?
We have sheriffs in New York?
Marshall.
What are we going to do if the sheriff shows up at our door?
We're going to stand in front of his door, all the people that stand out here, and we're going to stop them because it's become that kind of argument now. It's time for the people to take over. So we'll stand in front of the door, and they'll have to plow through us to get to put his stuff out.
If the people here and elsewhere stand in front of the door, we will sit inside and watch TV as they keep the sheriff from removing us from our homes. Thank you.